Hey, you know what drives me nuts? Banana walnut waffles. You drizzle some maple syrup on there, smash up some walnuts, and sprinkle those babies right over the top. Scrum diddlyumptious. But that's the good kind to drive you nuts. In this video, we're going to be talking about the bad kind of drive you nuts, and specifically when it comes to playing video games. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about that drives people nuts while they're gaming is anything that stops them from doing just that. That's right, interruptions. Things that stop you from playing your games. Boo! I mean, to some degree, it makes sense that you can't just play games forever, and depending on the situation, you may know that you only have a specific amount of time to be able to play your games. But when I think of an interruption, I think of something that is unexpected. For example, let's say that the table is all set for you to have a nice late night gaming session. It's 10:30, your entire family's asleep, your bedtime isn't until 11, and so you've got an entire half an hour to play some video games. Nothing can stop you now. So you start playing your video games and you're having a great time, but then all of a sudden, your phone rings, and it's that one friend who you're not quite sure why you're still friends with them. Why are you still friends with that fake friend? Get rid of them. But because you're a sucker, you answer the phone, and they start talking your ear off about the latest and greatest problem they're having at their work. And meanwhile, you're just thinking, you know what? Most people don't like their jobs, but I just want to play the magic carpet level in Aladdin before I have to go to sleep and go back to mine. But I would argue that even the expected interruptions can be really annoying. And as far as expected interruptions go, what could be more expected than your bedtime? I tell you, there's been at least a few times where I've been playing video games, and I don't know about you, but I get into this place sometimes where I am just in another world, absolute bliss playing my video games. So I'm playing games at night, and then all of a sudden I check my phone to see what time it is, and it just lays this bomb on me that I'm up like an hour later than I meant to be, and I just think, ugh, rude. Also, when talking about interruptions, I don't mean for this to be an invitation for throwing your loved ones under the bus. For example, say your kid's having a nightmare. It's not your kid's fault they're having a nightmare, and they come to get you because they're freaked out. It's the nightmare's fault. I mean, I suppose they could have eaten too much sugar or something, but don't get mad at your child, get mad at their nightmare for screwing up your gaming session. All right, but now for the next thing, let's go to something a little bit lighter, and for that, we have batteries dying in your controller. And actually, the Wavebird might be a bad example because I'm telling you, the batteries in this sucker last forever. I'm not kidding. I've had people say that they bought the Wavebird when it first came out, and they're still on the same pair of batteries that the controller came with. They took the rumble out of this, so it just lasts forever. Although, I'm pretty sure the batteries would start doing that nasty powdery thing when they go bad for being around that long. So maybe those people were full of it. But point is, batteries last a long time on the Wavebird. But for the controllers where the batteries don't last a long time, yeah, that can drive you nuts. There you are playing a game, and all of a sudden you get a warning that the batteries are low in your controller. Uh-oh. And maybe it's a game where you can't pause. Goodness forbid you're playing online. You're screwed. There's nothing you can do, and you're just at the mercy of however much longer those batteries are going to last. Now, if you use rechargeable batteries, then it's not as bad, assuming you have some more rechargeable batteries ready to go. Otherwise, you gotta wait for those batteries to charge up again. Now, for some consoles, you can just plug your controller into the console and keep playing while the battery is charging up. But In some cases, maybe that cable's not quite long enough, and then you're playing like this just so that the controller can reach the cable to be plugged into the console while you're playing. Alright, but speaking of consoles and cords, this next one is an absolute classic that pretty much any gamer ever has experienced, although I will say it is a bit of a throwback because it relies on having corded controllers, but it's what I like to call the good old console trip line. So you're playing some video games, and maybe it's a whole bunch of you playing some video games. You're all holding your controllers, and you got those cords running from your controllers to the console. And depending how far away from the console you are, those cords might be pulled to their maximum length. Nice and tight, nice and taut. And then somebody comes walking along who is unaware of those cords, and you're not alert enough to warn them about the cords because you're distracted, focused, playing the video game. So along they come, and booyah, baby, that console just comes along for the ride. Either freezes, maybe powers off, I don't know, but either way, it could be game over. Now, from my experience, it's generally kind of an ugly scene after this happens. You have the person who tripped, who maybe they feel like an idiot or they feel bad about it, and on top of that, they got a whole bunch of people who are angry at them, even though it was an accident. You've got concern that maybe the console is damaged or even broken. It's just not good. And where it can get into the drive you nuts territory, though, and then I guess you could say it's less of an accident, is when it just keeps happening again and again, and it's the same person doing it, where it's like, all right, we gotta learn here that you can't just go blasting through there. And I mean, I've seen some consoles really get ripped out by the good old trip line method. I mean, in some cases, these consoles might as well have just been picked up and karate kicked into the next room. Of course, losing your game saves is another good one, or bad one, I should say. I mean, nothing will drive you more nuts than that, especially if it's a game where you had gotten super far into it and then you lose all that progress you made. Oof, that's a tough one. But how about this one? And this is something I'm sure most of you have experienced, where you pick up a game that you haven't played for a while. Maybe it hasn't even been that long, but when you pick up that game to play it again, right away you're like, what the heck was I doing the last time I played this? I have no idea where to go or what to do. And hey, you know what? While that can happen playing video games, you know where else it can happen? Living life. Am I right, or am I right? But you know what drives me the most nuts while I'm gaming? Well, it would be when I'm driven nuts while gaming and then realize I wasted my time gaming being driven nuts, when that was valuable time I could have been using to enjoy my precious, precious video games. After all, playing video games is a very valuable resource for a lot of us in terms of what we get to do with our free time, and so it would be a shame if you let it go to waste. So it's best to try not to let too many things drive you nuts. But with that said, let me hear what drives you the most nuts when you're playing video games. Just for fun, of course, I'd love to hear. So with that, leave your responses down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video